Good morning and welcome to the launch of our new gauging software, D-Gauge Rift. My name is Colin Johnson. I'm the MD of D-Gauge, and I have the pleasure of leading our team today. You join us here at the beautiful Iron House venue. We're so disappointed that we can't be with everyone in person, but we're going to make our best to break the Zoom monotony and explore this wonderful venue with a series of different presentations and presenters. So what is D-Gauge Rift? Well, it's 2 years of software development based on 10 years of research, and for some of us, a lifetime of expertise. We're delighted once again to be presenting pioneering clearance software to the railway industry, and thank you again so much for joining us. If I can move quickly to housekeeping. As I say, we are going to navigate this venue. Please do bear with us and the technology whilst it tries to keep up with us, and more importantly, me, as we move around. We'll go through a series of presenters, and I expect that many people are going to have questions. Please do put them in the chat, and more importantly, the Q&A, and we'll do our best to come back to them at the end. Please keep your microphones mute, and if you can't hear us for any technical reason, please do put it in the chat, and then that'll signal us to have a look at the technicals. So, without any further delay, let's move to our first presenter. So, delighted to be joined here with David Johnson. David has 40 years experience in gauging software, survey methods, and the standards which really define the gauging industry today. You're joining us here to give us a potted history of really gauging, how it's got to date, and some of the future challenges which we know are on the horizon. David, over to you.
Thanks, Colin. Well, good morning, everyone. What I'd actually love to do today is to tell you all about the technical advances we've made in the last 10 years leading up to Rift, but I'm afraid that's not what I'm supposed to be doing today. My remit is to explain why today's world of gauging requires us to be a bit cleverer than we've been in the past, and to give some insight into why we've developed our Rift software. So I'd like to take you back in time, a time to some 40 years ago, before a somewhat younger me, at that stage with hair and the obligatory beard, first introduced the railway industry to the idea of using a computer to do gauging. 40 years ago, gauging was done according to British Rail Handbook 4, using bridge gauges, platform gauges, and bits of wet string attached to poles. At that stage, gauging standards even gave you the engineering drawings of the tools needed. The slide shows the construction of the BR standard wooden bridge gauge as prescribed in Handbook 4, and it even told you what screws to use. It was that detailed. And gauging itself was simple. Structures needed to be clear of the BR structure gauge, and trains had to be within the BR loading gauge. Fit guaranteed. All the information needed for the gauging engineer at the time to come up with those words that stick in my memory, which was no chance. The height of sophistication back then was the development of separate freight and passenger gauges, and a locomotive gauge, which actually still endures, even though it's slightly more complex than it was back then. The reason for the different gauges was because each vehicle type had different suspension characteristics. By having different gauges for each, more space within the structure could be used, a familiar story to today. C1 was then the standard post-war carriage gauge, and C stood for carriage, and W5 was introduced in 1984 as a chronological progression of the wagon gauges, W standing for wagon, of course, which started at W1 and led to what we now know and love as W6A. On the passenger front, C1 grew to C1 Appendix A, which maybe should have been C1A, but this was because it was allowed to, it had frangible parts like door handles and air vents that could be knocked off. Not a concept that we can use on today's railway, but which did provide a collection of door handles at the throat of Waterloo Station. These gauges covered 64-foot long carriages, or 20 meters as we now know them, the standard Mark I rolling stock. On the freight side, exception gauges for W6A appeared, with ears for containers, along with the purpose-defined SB1C gauge, which was SB1 standing for swap body, for European swap body loads, all to get more space out of the network. Gauging was done by plotting the measurements from the various tools on graph paper at 1:20 scale and scaling off a clearance to the required gauge with a ruler. Now, having spent a first career as a railway civil engineer and having done my share of measuring and plotting, working in many of BR's civil engineering offices, I set up LaserRail in 1989 to introduce new technology to the industry, particularly into those offices that I'd worked in who were open to new thinking and who'd, for some reason, actually encouraged me to leave BR. It was at this time that personal computers were just appearing in the UK. I'd always had a passion for computers since my school days, playing on a National Elliott 405 computer and having a fleeting appearance on Tomorrow's World in 1967. I'd spent a spell working in the US railways where PCs were in everyday use. I can see the potential in the context of our own civil engineering offices, albeit that BR it felt that the future of computing to be in a device called a superbrain, which I'm sure some of you will remember. The first device that we produced at LaserRail was a laser rangefinder, which we borrowed from the open cast mining industry, which meant you could measure a structure without physical contact, although to be honest, it wasn't really any more accurate. But it was much better on electrified lines than bits of wet string. And instead of getting numbers that had to be recorded with pen and paper and then plotted, output went via a Husky Hunter or Cyan Organizer into a PC-based program called Vertical Design Package, or VDP, where gauging was integrated with track design. This did the actual clearance calculations from the measured structure profiles to a selected gauge without pen and paper being in sight. As computers developed, we moved to interactive track design, or ITD gauging, in 1990, which added a bit more sophistication but still used MS-DOS. And the slide shows the then sophisticated user interface that we had. In 1995, we developed the first Windows gauging application, which was mouse-driven, ClearRoute, later known as ClearRoute Classic, which was followed by Balfour-Beatty's ClearRoute 2 in 2010. Each system progressively adding capability as the underlying gauging methodologies developed, as new systems for measuring appeared, and as standards evolved. This was the era of structure gauging trains, laser gauging vehicles, scanners, and laser sweeps. For interest, the slide shows the prototype laser sweep fresh out of our workshop. This one was first used to survey the Channel Tunnel in the aftermath of the 1996 fire to prove that the tunnel was still circular. Today's laser sweeps still use this same technology, but benefit from the lessons learned in ruggedization along the way. Also at this time, vehicle dynamic movements started to be considered separately from clearances for the first time, as a result of body movements going from unknowns to knowns in the gauging calculation, a revolution introduced by Railway Group Standard 5212, which I had the privilege of co-writing. Normal clearance then went from 200 millimeters to 100 millimeters. Along the way, our requirements for gauging changed. Capacity became the buzzword of the 1990s. We got longer vehicles that the network wasn't designed for, softer vehicles that rode better, 9'6" containerized freight, and tilting trains, which behave very differently to our conventional trains. Our freight gauges expanded physically rather than chronologically. W10, W11, W12, and even W13 for piggyback loads. Passenger trains no longer fitted the C gauges, even though C2, C3, C4, and even C5 were stenciled on the ends. The era of absolute gauging started. We coined the expression route opportunity and started to use the power of computing to make better use of our Victorian legacy infrastructure. It led us towards better measurement of structures and more complex vehicle models. It reduced the conservatism that was endemic in traditional gauging methods, where allowances hid unknowns in the gauging system. Without such technology, which we pioneered in Britain, it would be fair to say that our railways would not have been able to economically expand so much as they have over the last couple of decades. In essence, we traded simple calculations and inefficient use of space for bigger trains, but complexity of analysis, just like all other aspects of 20th century engineering. So where are we in the 21st century? We're seeing new measuring systems appear as the technology developed in other industries, such as LiDAR, becomes so cheap that it's now built into an iPhone and can even be fitted to drones which do gauging surveys, literally on the fly. Gone are the days when railways needed to define its own measuring systems. Our mission is simply to take the data, assimilate it, and give railway engineers the answers they need as the railway develops. Passenger trains continually strive to increase capacity and try to make the biggest trains, the manufacturers try to make the biggest trains that can be fitted onto the network. These new trains are increasingly complex. In our modeling, we have to consider not just 23-meter vehicles, but 26-meter vehicles, multiple suspension conditions, pitch and yaw of car bodies, variable tolerances, deployable footsteps, and intercar dampers, to name just a few of these new considerations. And despite attempts to develop standard passenger gauges, we're still optimizing vehicle designs for specific routes, largely through the necessity of accommodating the variability of our railway infrastructure across the country. At the moment, we're running 254 individual classes of passenger rolling stock. Freight is increasingly using low track force bogies, which save track damage by allowing the loads to move more. And we've seen new gauges W7 to W7A to W10A developed to accommodate that bigger movement. But these gauges are increasingly challenging to accommodate within existing infrastructure because they're inevitably bigger than the original gauges for similar loads designed around stiff and track-unfriendly bogies. What about the future? Well, the concept of the standard vehicle is really a thing of the past. Vehicle gauging models are getting increasingly complex. A typical vehicle in the 1990s consisted of around 50 coordinates. Now 20,000 points isn't uncommon. Point cloud data is becoming the new normal in surveying. Instead of 20 points defining a structure profile, it's more likely to be 2,000. How do we deal with this going forward? A clearance calculation used to be around 1,000 point-to-point calculations per structure profile. Now we're looking at perhaps 40 million. Henry Ford once said his customers wanted a faster horse, and for some, that's what they believe is needed from gauging software to accommodate the increasing complexity of data. But our view is different. It's about looking at the gauging process holistically. Certainly speed is important, but data intelligence is a key to addressing the complexity, using the power of cloud computing to let the engineer understand clearances based on information rather than data, without being constrained by the limitations of corporate IT systems. Why do we need something new? Well, I'll suggest a number of reasons. I predict that we will be relying more heavily on analytical gauging to value engineer our network better. We can add freight gauges until the cows come home to accommodate increasing demands, but the lessons from the last 40 years of passenger gauging is that it will lead to uneconomic solutions that will be unaffordable. This will mean that more freight gauging will be wagon load specific and lead to a far bigger matrix of vehicles that will be required when designing infrastructure works. Our present 254 vehicles will become many more as we consider individual wagon and load combinations instead of freight gauges. But this will unlock much more of the network capacity without costing us a fortune. The second reason is that we'll be looking to electrify more as we move into our net zero carbon agenda. So headspace will become an important consideration and will challenge our infrastructure design skills. This will require software capability to consider the overhead electrification system as an integral part of the infrastructure design process. And the final reason is that we need software that can be adapted quickly and easily to meet emerging needs. Rift includes many innovations, and there are many more to come. Technology, standards, and analysis methods will evolve faster than we've ever been used to. The evidence from this comes from other technology-led industries. Can we afford to be constrained? A quote from Steve Jobs seems pertinent now as it was when we introduced the first gauging software. And Steve said, a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. I hope that what you see today will give you an insight into what the future of gauging software might be if we're released from the shackles of the present. I've really enjoyed working on this project, which has been a real team effort, where we've pulled together some of the best gauging engineers in the country, an amazing team of software engineers to deliver what I consider to be the most exciting development in gauging technology I've seen in my entire career. I hope that you enjoy learning a bit about it today. So with that, I'll hand you back to Cole to take us back to the future.
Thanks, Dee. A really concise review of gauging to date, and I think a good overview of the future challenges which any future software is going to have to contend with alongside the overriding changes with the industry. So the next part of our digital launch day is to take you through to a video which is going to highlight what dgauge Rift is all about, the principles, and how we hope that it will start to change the way we do gauging.
Gauging software is vital for the safety, capacity, and operation of every rail network. It is essential to monitor and maintain safe clearances between trains and infrastructure, and is key to designing infrastructure upgrades or introducing new trains. Conservative or incomplete gauging adds costly delays to projects. Current commercial clearance software has remained largely unchanged for decades, with slow and cumbersome processes taking hours to achieve the very minimum standards. This is changing. Introducing dgauge Rift, intelligent clearance assessment software created by engineers for engineers. Rift's intuitive design, powerful assessment capability, and time-saving reports are optimized for track and infrastructure designers. With preloaded datasets and no complex training required, spend less time setting up software and more time optimizing designs, helping you to de-risk your gauging activities with precise, digestible information when you need it. It's trusted, accepted by Network Rail and compatible for other major networks. D-Gauge Rift is designed with track and permanent way engineers at its core. It's powerful, giving unrivaled assessment speed and accessibility. A fully cloud-based solution supported by mighty Microsoft Azure infrastructure. It's insightful. With D-Gauge Rift, you will gain deep insight into gauging issues, save time and reduce project risks. D-Gauge Rift, the new name in clearance assessment.
So, I hope that gives you a flavor of what D-Gauge Rift is all about. I have the pleasure of introducing you to Dave Stewart, not only our head of software, but also the lead designer for Rift. And he's going to take you through a demonstration of the software with some examples. Dave, over to you.
Excellent start. So good morning, everybody. I am delighted to be able to share with you this morning a demonstration of D-Gauge Rift. Hopefully you can all share see my screen. This is a pre-release of the software. It's in the final stages of development. I'm just going to take the next few minutes just to talk you through what it's like to use the software and how we believe that it's going to change the way that people use gauging software. So I'm starting off here at dgaugerift.com. Everybody with the user account will be able to sign in with their own email address. So I'm just going to sign in. That's going to take me to the home page. So the home page provides a summary of information relating to my account. On the left-hand side, we've got the sidebar. So that allows me to be able to change module. I can see recent projects that I've worked on, recent surveys, and the usual help features. Because it's cloud software, one of the advantages is you're always running the latest version of the software. There's no need to be able to do upgrades. So we're going to jump in and create our first project. We're just going to call this launch demo or something interesting. If we've got a customer order number, perhaps a purchase order number, I can type that in here. And that's created my first project. On the project screen, we've got a unique reference for this project, which is 1095. And there's 3 tabs. The first tab is assessments. The second one is reports. You can create reports from assessments. And the third one is history. History just gives you an audit trail of everything that's gone into the project, especially when you're collaborating with others. Because there are no assessments in this project, it's default to the new assessment screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and create my first assessment, which will be structure clearance. If I select survey, it takes me to a screen where I have access to all the surveys that are in the software. This includes everything I've imported myself, as well as full access to the NGD. We've got complete history of all the surveys there. So it's great. You can select any structure, and it gives you a full history, ordered by date of any surveys that you have. I'm just going to search for something really simple, just a quick underbridge that we can assess today. I can preview every slice, have a look at the geometry and check it on the right-hand side here. That all looks good. So we're going to select it and go back to the new assessment screen. Now I'm here, I have access to be able to select vehicles. Now, vehicle selection is a process that historically has been quite slow and quite difficult. So we've worked really hard to make that process as simple as possible. You see this option here, all Network Rail compatible. If I click that, what it's done is it's found all the vehicles according to Network Rail sectional appendix dataset that are compatible to run on this particular ELR. It defaults to all suspension conditions for the vehicle, but I can restrict those. And the permission column allows me to see whether I have access to that vehicle model. We've worked closely with the vehicle manufacturers and vehicle model owners, and we've got pre-approval for the majority of vehicle models. That means it's really easy to select vehicles. There's no manual chasing to try and get access to vehicles before you can start an assessment. In the case that the vehicle model you want to use does have additional permissions, we've got a request vehicle access feature here. So you can click that, fill in the form, and the software manages the approval process. There's no need to send emails or make phone calls to try and get access to what you need. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start Assessment. So what that's doing, it's as simple as that to begin an assessment. We can see on the left-hand side here, it's created our assessment and the progress bar is progressing. On the right-hand side, I can see the ingredients, the inputs that went into this assessment, including the vehicles that I selected and where the survey is. Because this is calculating in the cloud, it's not using my local processor. This is not tying up or slowing down my machine. I can multitask, I can navigate around, I could sign out of the software or create another project or perhaps import my next survey. Because this is making pretty good progress, I'm just going to click back into that and jump back to my assessment, but that continues to calculate. If my laptop ran out of battery, the assessment would continue. If I turned off my laptop, it would keep running. That's the beauty of calculation in the cloud. To start an assessment, all you need is a gauging engine license. We strongly recommend one gauging engine license per heavy user or engineer who's using it all the time. However, it is possible to be able to share licenses. So for an occasional user who couldn't justify a full-time license, they'll be able to start an assessment if that license was available. If there are no gauging engine licenses available, you can still create an assessment, but you won't be able to start it. It will save and you can hit start at a later time. That assessment's complete, which is great. So let's see what it's done. Rift is more than just a calculation engine. It's got a full reporting suite in as well. So I'm just going to click view results here. And that's going to take me to a results page, which summarizes our assessment of the structure and the 16 vehicles that were included within it. On the left-hand side, we have a summary of the full survey. We can see here very clearly that it's reduced. Of the 6 slices, there's one of them that's a little bit tight in the lower sector. And below the totals, we have a graph which shows the clearance per slice. And it defaults to the tightest slice, in this case, this one here. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got a few more details. This shows a slice plot with a dynamic position of the vehicle, including the tightest clearance in both sectors. If I select the second tab and go to map, because this survey is linked to the NGD structure, I can see where it is in the country, which is great. The survey info tab shows me the inputs that went into that assessment, including the vehicles. And finally, on the results table tab, we've got a full detailed table of each slice and which the tightest vehicle is in that case. Bottom right, we've got an export XLS button. If I click that, it's going to generate me a spreadsheet with all the raw data that was generated during this assessment. It takes a couple of seconds to appear. What this is going to do is just summarize the same information that's on this results page, but in a format that I can share with my colleagues or my customers. If we open that up, let's just fire up Excel. There we go. So at the top, we can see all the inputs and totals exactly like on screen. And we have a table with the tightest vehicle per slice. On the second tab, we actually have a table which includes a row per vehicle per slice. So we can see here that, here we go. Let's see if I share this one. Is that clearer? There we go. Hopefully that's great. Okay, so yeah, the Excel, we have totals at the top and a table of one row per vehicle per slice. Hopefully you guys can see that now. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see it's the W6A vehicle that's causing the issue there. So if I close down the Excel, let's go back to the software. Hopefully you can still see that. That was the Excel button. On the right hand, on the left hand side, we've got create report. If I click that, let's just give this one a title. We'll give it just demo PDF, something boring. And I can type whatever text I want in here as well. Perhaps you've got a few paragraphs worth of introduction text relating to this project. So I'm just going to put a couple of words and click preview report. So as well as outputting Excel documents, Rift is able to generate PDFs. So this is going to generate me a customer ready branded document with my logo at the top, the title that I've given the document, and a unique reference for this document. It shows a summary of the inputs, the vehicles and survey that went into it, including the clearance itself. If I scroll further down through the document, we can see full detail of the vehicle models used, the clearance standard that was used to assess this, and a table of the detailed results at the end. So if I click save, that's now added it to my project and it appears on the second tab. So in a little over 5 minutes, we've gone from creating a new project to a customer ready report. Using traditional methods, that may have taken several hours work. So that's our first assessment. Let's keep going And let's create a second one. I'm just going to click New Assessment again now. But this time, I'm going to select passing. This allows me to select a survey, but rather than a structure survey, this time I'm going to select a track survey or 6-foot data. I'm just going to pick a survey imported earlier today. I can preview it just like a structure. And I've got 2 sets of track geometry, and I can see the position of the rails on the right-hand side. There's a few that are deliberately close here, so we might get some foul clearances, hopefully. If I select that, I'm now able to be able to select vehicles on the right. Rather than selecting network rail compatible at this point, what I'm going to do is actually select a couple of gauges. So I'm just going to pick the passenger gauges PG 1, 2, and 3, and we'll pick the W6A as well, and we'll set that one going. So if I wanted to, I could have picked perhaps PAN 62 vehicles. We've got full access to the vehicle library, so I'm just doing a couple of simple ones here for demonstration. Passing assessments historically are quite slow to execute, so we've done our very best to optimize the algorithm and make it really, really fast to calculate. What it's doing is it's comparing each vehicle on both tracks, every combination of those, and it's saving out the clearance data for the combination of 2 vehicles that are the tightest for each slice. So that is just writing the results. There we go, that's done. So I can see all my inputs on the right, and if I click View Results, it's going to open up that screen. So here we are. This is the passing clearance result screen. On the left-hand side, the same summary. In this case, we've got quite a few foul and substandard slices. It's defaulted to the tightest combination, which is very much overlapping due to quite high cant on this slice. I can change to any slice simply by selecting on the graph or using these arrows here. And which combination of 2 vehicles show at the bottom. So it's very clear in this case. We've got the freight gauge versus the PG one. Same tabs at the top. We've got the map and the inputs on the survey info tab. And the results table shows me the tightest clearance and 2 vehicles with a suspension condition on the right. We can still export this report to XLS, or I can generate a PDF report. So that's 2 different kinds of assessment. Now, both of those assessments, I have imported data. So what I'll do is I'll show you how you get a survey into the software. What we're going to do is we're going to select from the left-hand side of the screen, infrastructure. This is going to take me to the page where I can pick any structure and see the surveys within it. We're going to click import survey at the bottom, which takes us to essentially a drag and drop page. Here I can add any survey files that I need. We've started by adding the industry standard file formats, including SC0s for structure surveys, TEF files, Excel files for platforms. And for passing data, we have SCX and our own template format for track surveys, which we've worked together with our development partners. If I click Browse Files, I'm just going to grab a few SC0s. I think this is a platform, so let's drop these ones in place. And what the screen is now doing is just previewing this survey. Because Rift is structure-centric, I need to tell the software which structure this is a survey for. But actually, the software is quite clever in this case. It's read the TSID that's in these SEO files, and it's automatically linked it to that NGD structure. So it recognizes this is Fox Hills Tunnel. If I want to, I could edit that link and link it to something else, or even create my own custom structure. I can have a look at the survey, check that everything's okay, look through each slice and check the track position. Well, I like this, so I'm going to go ahead and click Import Survey. So that's going to take those 79 slices and add those into the database for me. That's all done. And that's ready for me to be able to use. And because I've set the permissions like this, any of my colleagues also. There's other ways to collaborate within the software. If I select projects from the left-hand side, this gives me a list of all the projects that we've been working on as a company. And I've got visibility of my colleague's project here, Hatton Station Renewal. So we're going to select that one and have a look at a project that Colin created earlier. The first assessment is a stepping assessment. So let's go in and have a look at that. We haven't looked at one of those yet. I'm going to click View Results, and that's going to take me to the results page for a platform for stepping. On the left-hand side, we've got a summary of the clearances. Unlike passing and structure clearance, for stepping, it adheres to the standard or not. So any distances that fall within the lateral, diagonal, and vertical distances would appear as a pass in green, and any that fall outside of that would appear as red as a fail. I can navigate to any slice within my platform, and I can see where those steps are. If I hover, it will tell me the vertical and the step position and what those values are. Again, on the right-hand side, we have the map, so I can see where Hatton Station is, just in case we're not sure. Survey info tells me the inputs, and the results table tells me the full details of the maximum minimum for all the steps included in this assessment in all 3 dimensions. And we can see here that it's just the first few slices that are slightly high on the vertical stepping distance. I can export that data to Excel or generate a PDF report. What we're going to do instead is we're going to go back to Cole's project. We're going to have a look at Hatton Station Platform 2, which he ran earlier with a few vehicles on that. We're going to have a look to see whether this one's clear. As we can see, there's a couple of slices that are reduced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on this tab and see which vehicle is causing the problem. Of all these vehicles, it's clear the class for 158 that's causing the issue here. So what we're going to do is do a track design and see if we can move that, the track away from the structure and see if we can make that green. So I'm going to create an assessment within Cole's project. Permissions allow me to do that. So I'm going to select structure clearance. And I'm going to pick Hatton Station. There we go. But this time, I'm going to click the track design button. This takes me to a screen which allows me to apply lift and slew or enter a new value of count, speed, or curve for this particular survey. I can import design files from a CAD software, for example, Bentley Railtrack for XLS. And I can even generate my own design file. So if I click this button, it will create me an Excel document with the existing data with easy boxes to be able to type in my new values. Rather than doing that, I'll just enter a few values to give you an idea of what's possible. So if I want to just lift the track, all I have to do is just enter, say, 50 to raise it 50 mil. And what it's doing is it's plotting the original track position in green and my proposed new design in red. If I want to lower the track, it's simply just enter -50, and I can apply combinations of that, perhaps lift and slew at the same time. Cant is exactly the same process. If I wanted to level the track, all I have to do is enter 0, and that's rotated around the right rail inside running edge and lower the left rail by, in this case, 89 mil. What we're going to do, just for the sake of this example, is just add a little bit of slew to a few of these slices in the hope that that's going to move it away from our structure. The beauty of visualizing the changes top right is it's almost impossible to make mistakes because you can instantly see the effect that your design changes are having. I'm going to click Apply Design, and I'm going to select just the Class 158. So that's the vehicle that we knew was causing a problem. If we can solve that, we've probably solved this particular platform and this assessment. So we're rerunning Platform 2. Beauty of having multiple assessments in a project, so they're all grouped together. You can see the original as-is survey and then multiple pros designs, and it's probably the final design that you'll create a customer-ready report for, showing the proposed design you want to apply. So this is rerunning the platform just with one vehicle in the hope that we'll end up with, we'll move those particular slices that were quite close to the platform away, and it should become a pass. There we go. That's just going to take a few more seconds. Once I'm happy with my final design, there's nothing to stop me rerunning the assessment with all the original vehicles, safe in the knowledge that they'll all pass. So there we go, that's done. Only took a few seconds. I can see that design's been applied because I've got this link here, and that will pop up and summarize the design. But I'm just going to go ahead and click View Results, which should give me a green structure. Brilliant. I'm now officially an infrastructure designer. So there we go. That's a really, really quick tour of the software. I appreciate I've hurried through quite a few features, but hopefully that's giving you an idea about how easy Rift is to use, how fast the calculation gauging engine is, and hopefully how clear and simple the results are and that come out of the software. We're incredibly proud of what we built. A massive thank you to my amazing team who've made this software a reality. And regarding innovation, we are just keen to add as much as possible to the software. In terms of functionality, we are only just getting started. Thanks very much.
Thanks, DS. 2 years of development, 2 assessments in 20 minutes is a tall order for any person, but thank you for the whistle-stop tour. And I hope you can see why we're so proud and excited about this product, and we can't wait to get your feedback. On that note, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A feature. We'll do our best to answer them, but I'm reliably informed it's filling up fast. But please do put your questions in. Okay, so the next part of our session is to move away from the theoretical, Dave being the theoretical infrastructure designer, to some of our design partners, which we're development partners which we're working with. So Bonnerail have supported us since 2019 to help ensure that the software is made by or designed for track engineers by track engineers, so the features exactly what needs to be. So welcome Mark Mark Bonner from Bonnerail and Colin from Bonnerail too. So we've got a few questions to talk through the practical side of using Rift in anger.
I'll change mics. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to start with a few questions for you, if that's all right, Col. So maybe you can just start by just giving a bit of history and about your gauging experience.
Yeah, sure. So currently 8 years at Bonnerail, 15 sort of years altogether experience. But in terms of gauging, we use it every day, and pretty much my whole time at Bonnerail. Started on Clear Route 1 and then migrated over to Clear Route 2 once it became available to ourselves. Okay, perfect. And the rest of the industry has really seen Rift for the first time. What was your first experience of Rift and how did it feel and for you? So way back in 2019, you came into our office and you had something else at the time, and it was when we had that first look at that, we were like, wow, this is amazing, you know. And then when last year we had the quick demo on Rift, and we were like, wow, this speed is phenomenal. The whole sort of streamlined process was really, really impressive.
And I think one of the things which you really articulated to us is the need of routine gauging, which really is the staple of what you use Clear Route for. To support us with our development, we asked you to kind of put forward some projects. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could just talk us through one of the projects which you gave us as the challenge.
Yeah. So like you say, I thought we'd use one of our plain line jobs. You know, it's a simple site. We do 20 to 30 a year. It's 600 yards long. It's got a couple of underbridges, a tunnel, some line side furniture, and obviously an adjacent track. So it had pretty much everything in there. 22 vehicles, I think, altogether. So, yeah.
And when you were using it side by side with Clear Route, what stood out in the comparison between the two for you?
Well, obviously the speed, as you've just seen, it's really, really quick. But yeah, the whole sort of process was very, very easy to use. You know, straight away you can import all your survey, and it's all sort of there, ready to be used. Straight away the vehicles are there, ready for you. And obviously the assessment itself, time-wise, was 5 to 8 minutes, and the actual, when we compared it against Clear Route, it was up at 5 hours. You know, so there's a massive difference there. So within 20 minutes, we've done the whole existing run of the whole site.
Okay.
So yeah.
And obviously you're a principal engineer at the moment, and you've got a junior team following. One of the key points which we're looking to address was accessibility. Mm-hmm. Would you have any worries or hesitations in giving this to your junior teams or less experienced teams?
No, absolutely not. You know, it's that easy to use. You know, there's no like mindless settings and stuff. It's just straight away import what you need to do, or even if you just want to do a quick run for the NGD, it selects your structure, so you can go away and say, can you do as a W12 run on York platform 6? And I'm pretty sure anyone would be able to pick that up and do it.
Perfect. And just to reiterate, thank you so for your help over the last 2 years in explaining the track engineering essentials of the gauging which goes in. Mark, I'm going to move some questions to you, really, which are more kind of business-centric related. We've worked together, Bonnerail and DGage, for a while. Maybe you could just talk us through, you know, how you want to get involved with Rift.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously, we worked together on a couple of gauging vehicle instruction schemes in the past, a long time ago. So, obviously, we knew of the consulting side of the business. I think Ian Court would be a bit disappointed if we don't mention him at this point. Ian was working with both companies independently, and saw the mutual benefits of us working with you and vice versa. You know, so it was from our point of view, we knew the team, we knew what you could do. We obviously confident what we can do, so it was a no-brainer really getting involved in the development.
And I suppose the principle behind Rift, as David pointed out in the first part of the session, is about being agile and responding to the industry ever-changing needs. We developed an agile approach. It's quite unique in the railway. How have you found working with our kind of agile software development process?
It's been great, actually. It's been refreshing to do something different. Obviously, opportunities don't come often like this. Colin's been kind of buzzing when he comes off the calls. Obviously, him and David have been bouncing ideas off each other. I think the main thing for us, though, was that, you know, nothing that we've suggested has been ignored, and you guys have genuinely listened to us in how we want to use the software. So I think that was probably the real big change for us, and the positive element of it that came out.
Awesome. And from a business perspective, what do you see is the single biggest benefit from being able to have Rift within your software arsenal?
Well, I mean, we've touched upon it, and you guys have seen it today, that the speed of it is game changing, really. So we obviously work in the railway; it's a fast paced environment, short deadlines, all that kind of stuff. So fundamentally, using Rift allows us to develop better designs, because we can do more iteration without the time-consuming gauging runs. So I think fundamentally, it will allow us to produce better solutions and more optimized.
Perfect. And I think final question would go to gauging software has typically been reserved for those gauging experts. Have you found having Rift, it's allowed you and your wider team to do more, which you couldn't traditionally do with gauging software? Yeah,
I mean, there's been some spin-offs for it, really. I mean, I've not really done any gauging assessments in anger for a long time, but as soon as I got the access, I picked it up and started using it without any issues at all. But yeah, we've been using it for kind of pre-site information as well, you know, so you can get straight on there, get straight on the NGD, you know what you're dealing with before you even get to site. So there's probably tons of spin-offs that come from that speed, that obviously we don't have available to us with current software.
Fantastic. And Cole's going to join us on the Q&A. So if there's any questions which you've got relating to more supply-related things, please do put them in. And Cole and Mark will also do their best to try and answer the question. So, guys, thank you both so much for your time here. Enjoy the coffee. And we're going to move to the final part, which is answering your questions.
So, I'm reliably informed that we have been overloaded with questions. Thank you, Mandy. So we're going to do our best to answer as many questions as we can in the time available. We probably won't get round to them all, but what we can do is ensure that all of them will be answered immediately after the session, and they'll be circulated within the group. And some great questions come through. Let me start by introducing the panel. We've already met Dave, our lead designer and head of software. We've also got Ian Johnson. Ian leads our engineering consultancy team, excuse me, which is also key to the Rift development, ensuring the data, the algorithms, and some of the vehicle aspects. And we've got Colin, who you've just been with. So we're going to get straight into the questions. First question is, when will Rift be available? It's a software related question.
I'm happy to answer that one, Cole. Yeah, so great question. When will it be available? October 2021, later this year. The software will be out for general release. We are between now and then. We're currently working with our development partners in order to refine and finish off the software, as well as a few early adopters.
Thanks, Dave. Next question is, how much will Rift cost? Great, very pertinent question. I'm going to take this unless anyone wants to jump in afterwards. So Rift is done on a different pricing model. It's charged in two ways. One, as Dave alluded to, it's on gauging power. So the more gauging power you need, the more we can add more processing power to you. And the other one is by the number of users. So whilst it may be slightly different for different organizations because of their requirements, really all the feedback we've had is it's incredibly competitively priced compared to the industry standards at the moment. And I think the other thing to point out is many of the traditional bolt-ons are included in Rift standards. So that's really the approach that we want to take, which is it's less of a modular approach and more of an inclusive start to finish approach. Okay, next question. Being overloaded with questions here. Next question is Rift accepted by Network Rail? So Ian, you've led our acceptance process. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, is the short answer. Network Rail will accept the clearance numbers that Rift outputs. We've got a formal agreement in place with Network Rail, which is documented, and you can append that to your reports to give your clients confidence in the numbers and to assure them that they will be accepted. We are also continuing to work with the Network Rail gauging engineers for the output of the automated reports to ensure that that gives them everything that they will need.
Thanks, Ian. Another question come in is, does Rift integrate with CSDs? Obviously an industry staple of data. Cole, would you mind answering this, because you're the clear user in the room?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because obviously all your surveys are imported into this structured database that Clearit uses, and then that's what's passed around between companies or passed around to Network Rail. But I'd say 90% of the transfer of the CSDs is to Network Rail for them to upload to NGD. But because of the way Rift works, you know, you upload your surveys and it's already linked to the NGD. You know, you're skipping out that whole sort of process of doing that thing. So you probably don't need to link the two together. And the way that the importing of platforms and surveys is quite quick and easy and smooth to do, you know, you're not really saving any time, I don't think. So it's tricky, but no, I don't think so.
Thanks. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of questions that are on data import and what types of data import. And I think that the key point there is, by accepting the industry standard imports, that you negate that need. Next question, will dgage offer any training? I presume software training. Okay.
Yeah, good question. I guess it's worth starting by saying that dgage Rift has been designed to be as intuitive as possible. Hopefully you've seen in the demo that it's really clear and easy to use, so that learning curve should be as shallow as possible. But what we do offer as part of any user buying the software is onboarding, basic training and support included in the price. But I think from more of a gauging side of things, we will be offering Gauging 101 training courses. So rather than how to use the software, but some of the fundamentals about gauging is something we could offer if you wanted any of your staff to attend that course.
Ian, you lead the training for Gauging 101. Could I maybe just append to that on what that course is, just in case?
Yeah, so it's more about the fundamentals of gauging, understanding the outputs and how to interpret things. As you can see from the software demonstration, the software is really easy to use, so you don't need to be trained really in what to click and what process to go through. So we feel like that session would be more beneficial to you and your team if it's more about the integration of gauging within the whole system and those parts of it, to give a broader knowledge and a better understanding of the whole area.
Thanks, Ian and Dave. So, good question. Will Rift work with other networks? Obviously, the case study you've shown is very Network Rail centric. Dave, perfect.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the good news is we have designed and built Rift to be able to support any network in the world. However, we're launching just with Network Rail to start with. The difference between networks is really about mostly the vehicle library, but also potentially differences in banding and clearance categories, potential difference in gauges and a few settings. So we built Rift in essentially using templates. So the first template is Network Rail, but we are looking to support any network, including metro systems around the world very soon.
Yeah, I think adding to that, we're really interested to hear from anyone who works with other networks outside of Network Rail and be part of that process of how we customize it for that network. So next question, engineering related, one close to my own heart. Does Rift do probabilistic gauging? So Ian, could I ask you to do your best to answer that one?
Thank you. No, Rift doesn't do probabilistic gauging. Although the technology is established, we are currently going through a process with Network Rail for them to understand how the outputs will integrate with their systems. So how will their engineers, their TMEs, their gauging engineers understand the outputs, so that we're not introducing any unknowns into the system, if that makes sense. So Rift uses the traditional absolute gauging approach, which is the approach that's been used for the last 10 years, and is the approach that's accepted across Network Rail, London Underground, and many other systems. That being said, we look forward to the time when we can offer probabilistic gauging to the industry, and help give the benefits to the industry of the research that we've been doing in that field.
Yeah, I think fair to say it's not for want of trying, and we look forward for that technology to come on stream as and when the industry is ready as a body. Good question, Kevin. Can you assess multiple structures, sites, or routes? Dave probably linked to the demonstration you gave.
Yeah, another good question. Really, for the purposes of timing, today I just demonstrated assessing one structure survey at a time. We focused the software around infrastructure designers. However, we appreciate that assessing a survey that contains multiple structures will be necessary, and that will be offered. You'll be able to import a single survey and match slices up to different structures. The advantage of that means that they can be categorized and banded in the right way. And we're calling that functionality site survey. So yes, you'll be able to import site surveys as well as structure surveys.
Perfect. And I think fair to say, Cole, at the end, you're supporting us in that process of how we would import, say, a 600-meter section as efficiently as possible, and not just the individual section. So another question, can I do pantograph assessment?
It depends, I suppose. Rift can accommodate gauges, and it can accommodate static gauges as part of that. So the crude pantograph gauging that many might be familiar with could be accommodated within Rift and can be accommodated within Rift. The more complex dynamic pantograph gauging, which I suppose we're probably more well known for, isn't currently available within Rift, but we hope to introduce that soon, so that we can offer the benefits of all the great work we've been doing in that area.
Yeah, I think along that ilk really is, if there are organisations who focus on both track and electrification at the same time, we'd be delighted to speak to them and understand how we can tie the two together, the two traditionally separate disciplines. Question on integration: does Rift integrate with Bentley type systems? I think you kind of covered this, Dave, didn't you?
Yep. Yeah, integration with CAD or track design software, I understand the question to be. So we can take Excel outputs out of Bentley. We've developed a really simple template, in fact, with the help of Colin, to make it as easy as possible and very similar to the kind of files that you'd already be using if you were doing design work. We don't have API level integration with Bentley, but I think the process is really slick, and it allows for iterative design process, especially with fast assessment, that works really well.
Maybe if you don't mind, I could just pass the question on to Colin and how we've obviously developed Excel templates with it. How have you found that process and the templating which we've got in place? Do they meet your needs, maybe?
Yeah, so I guess it was this is the idea of working together, to be able to create something that is the most beneficial for ourselves, obviously, in terms of speed and being able to do the many iterations of design changes. So we've obviously got all our design data sheets that we have at the moment. So it was trying to transfer that into a simple sort of import sheet that the software could read, and then it was simple to use for all users and be able to get that straight into the software. And obviously we've been able to develop the design sheet as well as the passing import sheet, so we are developing them nicely, and it is becoming a lot easier to be able to use it and to be able to import it, especially since we've got all the information in front of us already. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I think it also alludes to the point which you said, Dave, that this is the start, not the end, and as such, we expect designs and excels and imports to evolve as the industry does with their tool sets. Got final question, which I'm being told that we've got time for. So it is, can I build vehicles and the vehicle library specifically? Ian?
Thank you. Not yet. This version of Rift is designed specifically for track and infrastructure activities. How we've made that possible is we've curated the vehicle library. So we've gone through a process of confirming that our models are up to date and our vehicle library is complete. And we've done that with the vehicle owners and the vehicle manufacturers. And that should cover all your needs. That being said, if you want to access any bespoke vehicles, please feel free to talk to our in-house gauging team. I'm sure my team would love to hear from you. And we can create those vehicles in parallel with you and collaborate with you and assess them as you need.
Perfect. I think it's again become a point which maybe you've made, Cole, as in the infrastructure world, there's less need for bespoke, but you may need a vehicle access which is maybe hidden from view, and that's where we can really help and add value to that. Thank you so much for answering that kind of whistle stop of questions. Many more on the chat, and feel free to add some more as we go. We will get back to you hopefully today. It kind of leads me to draw today's session to a close. Next steps really, as Dave alluded to, the software is available in general release purposes in October of this year. We're still continuing to finalize some of the features and some of the imports with our development partners, Bonnerail, and some other industry larger organizations, and thank you for their continued support there. Really, the next stage, if you're interested in seeing and using Rift for yourself, we'd love to actually come and see you now that the world is opening up. So please do get in touch with our commercial team, either Laura, Tom, or Mandy, and we will come to see you, and can't wait to hear your feedback and understand what more you potentially need from software. It really does just leave me to thank you so much for your time today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been a bit different from the normal Zoom. It's definitely been a hoot trying to do it in a slightly different way. So thank you, and have a great rest of the day.